Well, I have to say, first time doing a stream in a long time, and it's the first time I've appeared with somebody else on a stream for a long time. But just as well, I'm not somebody who suffers from a sort of paranoid disposition, for the simple fact that one of the comments from Budgie Burger, what the fuck you on, bit? Where did it go? Just thanks, DJ, for still being alive, because some people want you Charlie Kirked. I appreciate that, mate. I don't know what I'm meant to make of that, in all honesty, but got to keep on going, I guess. Speaking of the Charlie Kirk thing briefly, I'm not going to get too much into that because that's not what this stream's about. But irrespective of like what you thought of him regarding his politics and whatnot, it's fucking grim what happened there. Like, I tried to avoid watching the actual footage of it, but then I started seeing all these videos on Rumble, etc., trying to insinuate that it was all like AI and stuff, it was fake, etc. So I decided to bite the bullet. Pardon pun. I wish I didn't, because I watched the footage and it's fucking grim. That said, anyway, aye. So, Scots Armour, Derek Patterson, Sunday with the lads. Have you got your armbands on, mate? You ready to embrace the progressive, the progressive slop?
Yeah. Well, it's good to be back after a while, in all fairness, mate. I think last night was probably the first time I've actually been in the mindset of looking forward to just coming back and having a blather. I'd popped in to say hello to Bonnie and Tam. It's been a while since I've seen the boys, and I think it's just everything else with life in it, working commitments and everything else. Just kind of sometimes I suppose you just go with the flow because life can be 100 mile an hour. But nonetheless, Budgie, I don't think it was the fact that he took it to be insulting me. I think it's like one of the A ones. It's kind of if he didn't have the mindset and the banter, that could have been a bit dark for folk.
Especially since I fucking doxed myself at the start of the year. I hope not hate, like they said in the fucking death squad.
I will reiterate, the stream isn't about Charlie Kirk, in all fairness. There has been quite a lot of people already touched on that. If later find a spot to kind of agree thoughts on it, then perhaps, but nonetheless, what we will say, I suppose, just with mentioning Charlie, is we've got I take our hat off and give a nod to two gents that we've luckily enough been able to call friends, and they're no longer here. DJ, do you want to say your piece first, mate, since it's your stream?
Well, I mean, technically it's your stream. I'm just doing it on my channel. But, well, obviously, for those that don't know, and I mean, I don't expect many people to know who he was, unless you had Telegram. But there was a guy, and I did make a video about this several months ago. He went by Nostradamus on Telegram, and just a few years ago, he ended up getting diagnosed with cancer that spread quite rapidly across a good portion of his body, and he vanished off the internet for over a year, and nobody was able to get in touch with him. And unfortunately, it's been verified now that he's passed away. And I just want to say, in regarding to that, that I've known him since 2020. He was the first guy that I kind of got friendly with during the lockdown period when we were all stuck in our houses. I got quite close to him quite quickly, and he was a really good fucking friend to me over the years, as I was to him, and I'm fucking gutted that I wasn't really there. Well, you know what I mean? Like, because he vanished. Had he been around, I would have been able to get in touch with him, etc. But his health took a rapid decline, and it's fucking heartbreaking, really. And obviously John Davison as well. That was a bitter pill to swallow. We all knew that he was suffering from cancer, but it seemed to just take a sort of drastic turn within the space of a week. And he's no longer with us either. But in the next couple of months, I'll be down that way. So the plan will be to go and put some flowers down at his grave, I think, to two Christians, two men that I will miss. I thought a lot of John Davidson especially. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
You know, it was very, very nicely said, mate. I'll start with John Davidson first. It's a great sadness, but John was a man of deep spiritual belief, and I take great comfort in knowing that he's going to be in a better place. John was very persistent with doing these streams, even in the latter days when his health wasn't that great. And me and John had a very good conversation about many things on the last stream that I'd done that's still up on his channel. And it was good to get into depth with a number of topics. And the conversations will remain private, obviously, but it goes to, I suppose, in many ways, underline the quality of the man, because he was such easy to talk to about whatever it was. And one of the wee things that I will say, when I had took a bit of sabbatical a wee while ago, DJ Clive isn't here, but I had spoke to you two and I had spoke to John privately, and then I had obviously, when we go back to streaming, I'd let folks know about myself, my partner had obviously lost a child and stuff, and John was very supportive, and conversations and stuff. He was always very mindful, and he would always ask about family, always ask about personally how I was doing, mentally, physically, emotionally. And he will be missed, because he was a man that touched many people's lives, a man that spoke very positively of the people that he loved his family. And my heart breaks, because with a giant personality of a man, it's very hard to replace, and many people's lives it probably won't be. So it's great sadness on that respect. But with our friend Nostradamus, like you're saying, when I had came into the conversation, we kind of get him introduced to certain folk, and he was a good Christian man like myself, and it was through yourself, obviously. That's how me and John became friends. And again, he was another one. He'd always make time for people. He never really put up with much crap. But once he'd kind of nipped it in the bud, that was it. There was nothing that was, I suppose, allowed to continue. He never put up with much shenanigans. What you see is what you get. And the last wee while, I've been having a lot of people kind of a message me back and forth. One guy in particular, I've already said to yourself, from the States, that have kind of they're doing a wee thing over there for him. So it goes to show again the measure of the man, and he will be missed in these circles, because it's somebody that advocated all the right things, challenged all the right things, and wanted all the right things for not only himself and his family, but for our people. So two great men that are no longer here, but they're in a much better place, and their souls are at rest. God bless them.
Amen to that, mate. Amen to that. The last thing I'll say about Nostradamus, and we've joked about this before, but like one of the funniest things about him back in the day was he had a tendency to have a bit of a bad memory. So he would be exchanging voice notes with him, and then he would just like stop mid voice note. Give me 2 minutes, I forgot what you were saying. Oh man. But yeah, so yeah, they will be missed. So I just hope that for anybody that tunes in at a later date or whatever, if you did know John, or one off, or both of the Johns, obviously you'll know that John Davidson passed, but you might not necessarily been aware about Nostradamus. But yeah, it's been confirmed, and it's no nice, put it that way. Yeah. But I don't really know how to segue away from that without sounding inconsiderate. But obviously, 2025 almost come to a close already. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've not really paid the greatest deal of attention this year to all things politically speaking in Scotland. Kind of took a bit of a sabbatical to a certain extent. More often than not, you've told me about things that I had no fucking idea about. That said, there has been a few things that I have obviously paid attention to, and that is obviously the shit show that is progressive politics in our country. Whether it's crybabies in our parliament relating to the protesters outside hotels, or whether it's anti-racist / critical race theory education. The list goes on in that regard. Not really entirely sure where to start. There's not really a sort of plan for this stream, given the fact there's the fucking first one I've done in donkeys, so bit of ringrass and whatnot. But I think maybe since you're Glaswegian, this might probably be the best place to start. And I'm hoping this works, given the fact that I do not like the new StreamYard. I really don't. You're fucking lucky I'm doing this on my channel, you dick. You know what I mean? Should have been you being all nervous about sharing the right shit now. But, aye.
I've just got on with it, you haggis
I'm
munching
fucking trying,
shooter.
I'm fucking trying. Right, let me just check that. Oh, here we go. It worked. Right. So there's going to be a lot more videos in this as opposed to going through articles. By the way, I just thought that would make things a bit more like palatable. But just to get things started. So this is from the 22nd of August. Glasgow is ranked as the UK's asylum seeker capital as it tops the list of regions with the most homes given to migrants. SNP-led Glasgow Council is struggling with a 60 million budget black hole as a surge of beautiful progressive brown people and blanks, etc., arriving in the region has driven accommodation to breaking points. And of course, you get the size. These fucking people, by the way, on a side note, I am so fed up of these absolute dysgenic reprobates. However, resist the urge to Fed post. Concerns have been raised after Glasgow was ranked as the UK's asylum seeker capital, according to shocked new Home Office statistics, with the region topping the list for the most homes given to migrants, with 4,000 plus, mostly migrant households in temporary homeless accommodation in Glasgow. In fact, 44%, and we will come on to the statistics that are actually referenced in our parliament as well, 44% of all people in Glasgow who are like deemed homeless or like are applying to get accommodation, they're asylum seekers. 44% of Glasgow's overall homeless statistics is asylum seekers. So there is that. So obviously I'll start playing videos in just a second, but obviously you live in Glasgow, so what's your take on this? What, like, by the way? How's it going, Paul?
I'm not actually surprised to hear that, because in many respects, when you right, so I had done a post. This goes back to probably at the time that article was done, and when I was reading something along the lines of whatever paper that they kind of pointed out that Glasgow back in 1999 was a designated official dispersal hub for asylum seekers in the whole of Scotland. I think, give or take, off the top of my head, it was saying that I think it's about between 4.5 to 5 billion pounds thereabouts. I mean, I'd have to go hunt on Telegram to find the article, but it's thereabouts for the whole cost of housing asylum seekers, and it was kind of like giving you a projection of the next budget and stuff. But the thing that kind of sticks out for this, right, is obviously with a lot of places up and down the UK, right, depending on how your city's laid out, Glasgow's within a valley. And in Scotland, for the best part, as you know yourself, the central belt's saturated with the majority of the population. Before and during COVID, nobody had kind of noticed anything, and the longer things were going on, I'd say maybe for 6 months to maybe just over the year mark after we came out of COVID, and quote unquote, you were allowed out your homes. It's like, bang, a lot of people had gone, where the fuck have all these people come from, pardon my language? And that's been the reality pretty much since then. It's just been continuous overload, and overload, whether that be in local housing estates, whether that be out in the suburbs, whether that be in the schools, whether that be in the workplaces. And there's a running joke with people with Glaswegian, you're more likely to get hot with somebody on these electric bikes by people then deliver around Just Eat than when you're getting half a bus or a taxi. That is quite literally the state of affairs in here. We've got a plethora of strips. You've got Renfield Street, you've got the tap end of Argyle Street, you've got basically the strip that takes you from Sauchiehall Street out onto Charing Cross. There's like hotels up and down that part. It's literally just all these e-bikes, and it is really bad. It sticks out. Obviously, there's no point in me going too much to a tangent because everybody knows pretty much where my mindset is at. But it's a crying shame when you've got people that are born and bred in this city that work, live, pay all their bills, their council tax and everything else, and they can't get homes. People are living in overcrowded housing, can't get bigger homes. People that are in homes that are too big for them can't get smaller homes because of the shambolic housing affairs in Glasgow City Council. But also, on another note, you've had Susan Aitken come out and saying, we can't take any more people in. It is so bad, right? Which
Oh yeah, I've got the video of that. We're coming to that. Sorry.
You know exactly how bad Susan Aitken is, right? She's obviously asking for more money, right? But it's that bad that somebody that literally advocates very hard for them has come out to the degree where she said that. And I don't like this woman with any fabric of my being. But when people like her are saying, listen, enough's enough, that should demonstrate whether you're left, right, in the middle, up or down, whatever you are. When someone like that comes out, that's where like the line in the sand, it needs to be reevaluated for how bad the situation is in Glasgow.
Hey man, I mean, just on a wee brief side note, I'm going to get the videos up now, but like said in the past, like I've been down to Glasgow obviously quite a lot over the years, and coming from where I live, which is up in the Highlands, for anybody who is new to my channel or whatever, doesn't know whereabouts I'm from, I notice it straight away. You know, like unfortunately for people that live down there, they're somewhat accustomed to it as time's going on. But like, oh fucking hell, I notice it straight away. And there was times in the past where I'd be like the only white person on the fucking bus, etc. down there. But moreover, when it comes to the homelessness issue and whatnot in general, like surely, like I don't know how they're able to do it, but they are doing so. They're still manipulating the narrative to have people believe that if they just got more funding from Westminster, that would ease the burden. But that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, surely you just have to stop allowing people to come to Glasgow to claim asylum in the first place. You know, the waiting lists for people who are from Glasgow, who are Scottish, right? That's growing exponentially year upon year upon year, and you're adding to the problem by allowing these new imports, you know. But we will come on to all these things in just a second. So here's let me get it up. Got them all in a wee folder here. Like, first one, since we're speaking about Susan Aitken and whatnot. Well, no, in fact, no, Glasgow starts first. Right, here we go. And
now, what's happening in Glasgow is that refugees who now have a right to stay in the UK are often travelling from England or Northern Ireland and then presenting as homeless in Glasgow.
So why are they doing that?
Well, it's basically because the rules around who can get help when homeless are different in Scotland. Now, here councils must help everyone who presents as homeless, whereas in England you only get priority help if you're vulnerable or if you have children. Now, let's look at some figures. Glasgow City Council says that in the year 2023 to 2024, it received almost 700 requests from refugees who'd come from outside Scotland, but the following year that number had shot up to more than 1,000 requests. Indeed, since 2022, Glasgow's housed more than 2,000 refugee households at the cost of some £40 million.
So what is the council saying about this?
Well, the council leader, Susan Aitken, wants the Home Office to recognise the pressure Glasgow is under. For instance, she wants them to look at how more refugees might be helped to live in other areas. But crucially, she also wants financial help for the council.
They need to step in and support local authorities with the funding here, because we're looking at now a very significant budget gap for our budget next year, which we are legally required to balance. We will have to fill that gap, and the vast majority of it, the biggest share of it by far, is the cost of homelessness.
Well, there we go. So that's one of the clips I've got in relation to Glasgow. But I mean, this is also an additional problem. Well, there's two things that were springing to my mind there. I should have made clear before I played that clip when I was on about the demography and whatnot of Glasgow. Like, I think there's a bit of a misconception that's starting to piss me off a bit, and I don't think people are doing it intentionally. But, you know, when they're talking about like strange services or homelessness, you know, whatever it may be, like, or changing demographics, they keep blaming asylum seekers as if that's the root cause of all these issues. That is a problem. Nobody is denying that is a problem. It's a fundamental, serious issue, but that is not what is responsible for your changing demography in your towns and or your cities. It's just a sort of byproduct, if you will. But secondly, the issue there that was raised in that clip is also on top of the people who are coming to Glasgow to claim asylum, right? You've also got people from other parts of the UK after they've had their asylum claim granted, coming to Glasgow, or just Scotland in general, but Glasgow, because our laws are different. So they can actually get a house under our laws by claiming homelessness in Scotland, whereas they're not actually entitled to that down in England and Wales and whatnot. So that's also exacerbating the ever-growing list of people on waiting lists, etc. Right? The reality of the matter is, charity begins at home. You know, beating a dead horse in that regard in terms of what I've said. I don't need to keep repeating myself, but like, surely at some fucking point the border should be closed. I know, preaching to the choir and whatnot, but they can never find it within themselves to just say it. They can't say it, and you have to wonder to yourself why they can't say it. I know why, you know why, and that's not even a fucking rhetorical question of anything. It's pretty self-explanatory why they won't say it, because in saying it, then we could quote them forevermore. You know what I mean? But regardless, so yeah, what you got to say on that? Like,
I'm not really surprised. I suppose when you do these streams and you've got to read our things, it can be quite a bit overwhelming. And I know to people listening, they might go, what the hell do you mean, right? But when it comes to you, right, I know this is like preaching to the choir, but when you go down certain wormholes, rabbit holes or whatever, and you've got to read through a plethora of absolute crap, it can be a bit draining. And one of the things that have consistently stuck out time and time and time again, and you can go back, I think this has been going on for about 13, 14 years, and it has never been challenged in Parliament. It has never been challenged to the First Ministers. It has never been challenged in a general election debate. And folk, yous know, I don't believe in politics, but this just isn't about the SNP. This is about the Scottish government and political machine as a whole. In Scotland, we have missed the housing targets by some distance every year, running continuously for like the last 13, 14 years. And that isn't because of a lack of workers, that isn't because of a lack of funding, that isn't because they've not got enough land to build on, because again, comes back to Glasgow, it lives in Glasgow. Well, no, if there's a back court that doesn't have anything on it, they're going to build upon it. And I'll touch on to something that will kind of go into that in a moment. But so when you take these housing targets, right, and I'll just say for Pete's sake as an example, that they plan to build 20,000 homes every year. And in reality, they're lucky if they're scratching 8. And that's no joke. That's just an estimate of how far off they're missing our houses. These aren't precise figures. This is basically like a rough kind of an example of how you can understand the distance of how these, and this gets, you take this over the course of 13, 14 years, this all adds up. And then you look at Glasgow, right, which it seems to be, Glasgow's getting knocked down and has been getting knocked down within this time frame at a rate where a lot of schemes don't really reflect the schemes that I know them as, or people older than me will remember them as. And when they knock down a lot of these areas, they're not, building them up to house the same amount of people as they previously did, which is obviously added onto the list of ongoing people that need homes. I mean, this is all done deliberately. There's no other way to try and excuse that or trying to think of a logical or a rational reason. This is all done very deliberately to cause chaos and an overwhelming of services and demand. And without going off too much topic, this isn't just something that is isolated to Glasgow. This isn't something that's isolated to Edinburgh or to Scotland for that matter. This is a real issue that's right across the whole place. It's just, again, because of the scale of Glasgow, and it's in a valley, and you can get from one place to another driving through in no time at all. And when you're going through that wee stretch on the motorway, a lot of things stick out like a sore thumb. When you go into schemes, it sticks out in an even greater scale. So, truth be told, no, I'm not surprised with that. And truth, looking at the situation, DJ, I think between now and probably until next Christmas, you're going to probably see some type of fucking, I don't want to say humanitarian aid, I don't want it to sound theatrical and dramatic, but I think you're going to see genuine cries to the central government in London to say, listen, we've got a real issue here that can't be fixed. And I don't want to sound like a doomsdayer, but this isn't going to get any better. And the waiting lists, as I said, they're already beyond the means of what the council can actually do.
Yeah, mate. I mean, you said they've never been challenged on this in Parliament. I've actually got a clip of somebody from the Scottish Tories attempting to bring the subject up to a minister in our Parliament, and he's met with the proverbial cringe. So I'll play that in just a second. But again, just to sort of add on to the point that I was saying earlier on, you keep being met with accusations of scapegoating migrants when you try to point out that migrants are not helping the fucking problem, right? I think it's really disingenuous for these people to continuously insinuate that they're not playing any factor whatsoever in these issues. Of course, constantly importing people, whether legal or otherwise, is going to strain services, but these people refuse to concede that point. They can't accept it. They refuse. So that's where you get met with the proverbial accusations of, you're a Nazi, you're a goose stepper, you're just anti-progressive, you don't like brown people. Oh, fuck off. Fuck off. I'd actually have a semblance of respect for these people if they could just concede that potentially they're not helping the problem, And again, it's the old cliche of charity beginning at home. But the reality of the matter is, there is housing crisis, or crises, I should say, being declared in multiple parts of Scotland. On top of that, you've got councils on the verge of bankruptcy and whatnot. Waiting lists continue to increase exponentially each year. Social housing has not been built at adequate pace, right? But again, you have to question, especially in the context of Inverness, right? Inverness, for the longest time, was brandished as the fastest growing city in Europe. So you have to ask the question, given the fact we're not having enough children and whatnot, right? No families are being created, or not enough to substantiate itself in terms of a sort of replacement level. Who are these houses being built for? I wonder, So it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. You keep building houses, and then people come in who ain't the natives and take them, And again, just to conclude this as well, the thing, I don't know if it's the same down in Glasgow, but up here anyway, every single fucking new housing scheme that gets built, and Jesus, they are everywhere, and they're up here in Inverness. Inverness used to be a tiny wee city, yeah. In fact, there's only been a city for 20 odd years. Tiny wee city in a valley, right? And it used to be forests, etc., for as far as the eye could see. Now it's just all houses. But every single every single estate that gets built, about 25% of the houses that are built in said estate, they're allocated as social housing, right? But even that's not enough. It's not enough. Clearly, it's not enough if waiting lists are going up. And in fact, the Inverness Courier just last year, I remember reading it at the time, I think I might have posted it on my Telegram, over 9,000 people in Inverness alone on the fucking waiting list for a house. But But hey ho, it's fine. Just keep those borders open. Spread those pictish butt cheeks.
Well, look at it like this, mate, right? Excuse me. So you've heard of Motherwell, right? There's a place in Motherwell. I think it's called it's like Muirhead or Muirhouse or something like that, right? You can Google it and type in Motherwell. It'll give you the exact place. But in this part of Motherwell, it's just high-rise flats, mate. There is obviously like typical quote-unquote normal houses, but there's about 8 to 10 just a strip of these high-rise flats, right? And I think there's maybe like 6 houses on a floor, and they go up to about 19 or 20, right? And what they've done is they basically took all the natives out of these houses and put them elsewhere because they were going to blow them up. They were going to blow them up and pull them down because apparently, quote unquote, they weren't fit for purpose. And after they've went and dislodged everybody and pulled them out, in the space of about 3 months, they've changed their decision. They've went in, they've revamped them, done them all up to standard apparently, and now immigrants are going to be placed in there that are literally coming into the country, whether it be from Africa, whether it be from the Middle East, whether it be from Ukraine. And you've got to ask yourself, right, and I'm taking it at face value, their housing lists and the demand for social housing is equally much of a burden and overwhelmed and strained. And you've got to ask yourself, right, with all the people that was on this waiting list looking for housing and they knew that they were going to go in and revamp them, is it not a complete kick in the teeth for families that are looking to get out of overcrowded houses and being completely overlooked and spending all that money moving people, then spending further money, getting them up to standard and revamping them, to still have the same issue with a housing list because they've went and done this with the quote-unquote refugees? It's a created chaos, it's a created problem, it's created division, it's created segregation, it's created all these issues within the community because naturally people are going to feel hard done by. People are going to feel that they have been discriminated against simply for not being a quote-unquote refugee or a quote-unquote asylum seeker or a quote-unquote criteria for priority housing. It's them that have created this madness, and it goes with the same in Glasgow, it goes with the same in Renfrewshire and Paisley, it goes with the same right in the whole the Glasgow, Clyde Valley, Inverclyde region. That is the same up and down this part of the country, mate.
Yeah, and to top it all off as well, they add fuel to the fire by continuously lambasting people who have the timidity to point these things out as either they're accused of scapegoating migrants. I am getting fed up hearing that phrase. You're scapegoating migrants. Either that or you're far right. Either that or you're racist, etc., etc. You know, these tired, boring arse fucking phrases that they just keep throwing about the place. But what do you think of this, right? This was in relation to what you were saying earlier on about them not being challenged. Listen to this. Listen, mate. This is rage porn, huh?
Stephen Kerr. Scotland's biggest city is enveloped in a homelessness crisis, which is impacting all of central Scotland. 44% of people presenting as homeless in Glasgow come from asylum seeker households. And asylum seeker families also make up more than half of all temporary accommodation placements and over 60% of children in such housing. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that the SNP policy of open borders would only make the housing emergency worse?
Yeah.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, Stephen Kerr, not for the first time in this chamber, should be utterly ashamed of the contributions that he's making. Along with the contributions from his colleague Craig Hoy on a change of character in the south of Scotland, he too should be ashamed. Scotland is an open, welcoming, inclusive country, and the homelessness prevention support that we provide is for everybody in this country.
Question number 7.
Before you even interject there, obviously this is about Glasgow, so I want to get your take on that. But I mean, Thankfully, it was a woman this time around. It came away with that shite, right? See, when a man, like a member of the SNP or whatever, who's like a male, allegedly, like all that goes through my head. I'm trying to be PC to a certain extent so the stream doesn't get nuked. But put it this way, I think of very homophobic, inflammatory words. It's just so cringe. Yeah. Like, the guy made a very valid point, brought up statistics that are legitimate, in relation to 44%. The statistics don't lie. It's becoming an ever-increasing problem, and these people are exacerbating an ever-growing amount of people who are on waiting lists. And what's the response from our so-called Scottish nationalists, the progressive goose-stepping gurus of the modern era? I think you're so racist. Yeah, fuck off. This is what people... I think that's what's actually pushing a lot more people, like, in general. Not that I'm very politically... or I don't really believe in politics myself, obviously, as most people know. But I think that's what's pushing a lot of people to start really questioning what's going on here, whether that's in a civic nationalist context or otherwise, because this shit's gone on for so long, but it's getting to a point where it's unignorable anymore. We're at boiling point, tinderbox, etc., and just being constantly shut down when you're bringing up legitimate statistics, facts, or even just concerns. You're met with this same crackpot BS time and time again. Yeah, which like, I mean, don't tell me you're a bigot, mate. Come on now, be very progressive.
Right. I'm going to ask for 2 minutes to go through something very, very quickly, right? So, MD listening live or MD listening after this comes off live, grab a pen, grab some paper, take note. As it stands, the University of Glasgow, you can have access to course fees waived if you're an asylum seeker in Scotland. We've been in temporary residency for at least 1 year. You can also have a travel bursary, which covers 50% of the public travel costs. That's maximum £50 per month for each individual. The Refugee Sanctuary of Scotland provides travel grants to cover journeys related to appointments, such as Home Office, plus a £10 substance payment that is arranged through partner referrals. Also supports with housing, mental health services. They also maintain partnerships that aid to get access to basic goods. Refugee offers appointments to refugees where they can book and access food, toiletries, children's items, clothes, prams, goods. It provides an on-site tea, coffee and snacks and Wi-Fi, as well as workshops for its users exclusively to refugees. Shocking terminology, I know. The Highlands Support Refugees covers Inverness and the Highlands, volunteer-run collects and distributes donations of clothing, baby items, toiletries, sleeping bags, shoes to refugees in asylum centres across the region. The Maslow Community Shop gives free clothing to refugees and families. The Edinburgh City Mission Salam project, it has a food bank and a clothes bank that provides meals and clothing and toiletries to the refugees. Bikes for Refugees Scotland provides refurbished bikes, helmets, locks, lights and welcome packs free for all refugees and asylum seekers. E-Bike Freedom, CIC, the free bike programme, refurbishes second-hand bikes and gives them, including safety kits, to refugees and asylum seekers. Bike for Good Community Bikes, community scheme offering training and cycle repair with associate support to refugees. The Central and West Integration Network offers next bike share accounts for asylum seekers and refugees, plus cycling-related activities. The Scottish Refugee Council offers advice on welfare, housing, integration support, signposting to local charities to distribute goods that they need. The Govan Community Project lists multiple partners, PAIH, for housing and material support. In Scotland, there's the new Scots Refugee Integration Strategy. This partnership between the Scottish Government, COSLA, and the Scottish Refugee Council includes education-based support from the very first day of arrival, including school integration, assisting, ESOL and EAL provision and family outreach. The Education Refugee Team targets support homeschooling systems for Primary 7 transition programmes. ESOL, that's basically English-speaking other language courses, hence the abbreviation. For family members, wellbeing groups and community integration events. Skills Development Scotland career advises priority guidance and support to school-age leavers, particularly those in senior phase, specifically for refugees and asylum seekers aged between 16 to 18. Between October 2020 and December 2023, the project received £6.6 million funding under the EU's Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund. These periods are government-matched funding from the Scottish Government. From October 2020 to March 2021 was £16.8 million. From April 21st to March 2022 was 160.9. Right? From April 22nd to March 2023, 220, and April 23 to September 23, 154. These any funding figures beyond that haven't actually been outlined yet, haven't been published, nothing whatsoever. You can't find that information at all, and even at that, when you go, there is inconsistencies with who actually gives the final authority to declare the figures. You will come across figures that are significantly less and figures that are probably a bit in the halfway mark. I have to insist in emphasising that part, because the clarity of these figures is shambolic, to say the least. But as of October to December 2023, there is nothing there, despite them still funding this. So that's a question within itself. The Scottish Government Support and Equality Budget. Prior to this large EU funded scheme, the Scottish Government allocated £2.7 million between 2017 to 2020 from its equality and community funding to support refugee integration efforts such as English-speaking other languages, employability and mental health services, cultural programmes run by third sector partners. And in 2024 to 2025, financial planning, the government earmarked the following: £3.6 million to the Scottish Refugee Council, over £400,000 in grant funding to the third sector organisations supporting the refugees, and in total £1.6 million of refreshed funding for the updated New Scots strategy, including a £500,000 dedicated investment to ESOL and employment projects via Scottish New Scots Fund. Now, when you've got Mr. Kerr in Parliament and he's asking a sincere question about a very, very hot potato of contention which is happening in Glasgow right now, and that lady's defence is you're scapegoating asylum seekers, you're scapegoating refugees, you're making these people the target. That is simply not the case. There is people, again, to emphasise, born and bred in this city, people that are native to the land that have came to choose Glasgow as their home, and they are being neglected simply for being white Scottish, simply being overlooked, simply being left behind, simply being neglected. Whilst, as I've just laid out to you, all these partnerships, all these fundings is aimed at one particular group. So to suggest that people are scapegoating, to suggest that people are making up whatabouteries or conspiracy theories doesn't hold its weight at all. The matter of the fact is this: the Scottish Government, whether it be the SNP, Liberal Democrats, Labour, the Scottish Greens, or whatever pop-up puppet machine that is speaking right out its arsehole for that Parliament, has no interest whatsoever in doing the decent dignity of looking after Scots first. And this is what I emphasise every time I speak about that bastard in Parliament. They are not fit for purpose. They are not fit for your community. They are not of us. It is time to disengage and give these people the vote of no confidence to their jobs and to that system.
Well, you're there, eh? And that's only the things that is public knowledge. I mean, how many things are being sort of done behind the scenes in terms of funding? It's always the age-old question, isn't it? In terms of where they're getting this money from, the metaphorical magic money tree. Clearly, they bang on to no end about needing more money and funds from Westminster year upon year upon year, but yet they've always got money when it suits them to pump into absolute BS. That said, just on the topic ever so slightly of sort of questions that a lot of the public are asking themselves that have been relayed in our Parliament. I'll give you another wee example here, but while I get the clip up as well, I'll just say, seen the last couple of days, right? Because it's a common it's common knowledge to people that have known me for years. I don't really look at my comments all too often. I don't get notifications. So like, unless I like go back onto a video that I've made and scroll down, then I will never know you've posted a fucking comment. Hence why it looks like I've been ignorant. However, in the last couple of days over the course of the weekend, I've had like a periodic scan here or there. Twice in the last 2 days, I've been called a fucking unionist, right? Simply for posting shit about the SNP. This is the state of where we're at now in terms of like the discussion in this country. You can't even call out our crackpot government without being, referred to as a Tory or a unionist. So just again, for the record, by the way, I'm not a fucking unionist, okay? I never have been, never will be. No offense to any unionists out there. I just don't give a fuck about the union. Never have, never will, okay? Just clarifying that, all right? Because I ain't no unionist. Anyway, right, so just on this...
Before you go any further, see, this is another point of contention that I simply find absolutely baffling. So... We formed this mindset, and you've heard me in the streams that we have done when it used to be the 2 streams a week, and even when it used to be just into the 1 stream on the Sunday night. I call them SNP loyalists because you cannot point a fault about the SNP. You can, even like that, with genuine, legitimate things, right? Whether it be Derek Mackay trying to groom young children, whether it be John Mason literally berating and degrading disabled people, whether it be when they won the historic, what was it 51, 52 seats or something like that year that they had enough all the representation for Scotland in at Westminster, and somebody had told us, because I stay up the top end of east of the city, I think it was down in the Parkhead district. This is an area for people that don't live in Glasgow that is heavily got high levels of poverty, that inadequate housing and all that. It's not a reflection of the people. It's a very neglected part of the city, and it has with that a lot of people in it as well that have drug addicts and alcoholics, etc. But what the SNP chose to do, and totally ignored obviously the type of people that lived within this, is that the local branch office of that representative, they had vans fill up with champagne, wine, beers, and all this fine food for basically, I think it might have been about 20 staff members, which cost absolute thousands and thousands of pounds. When people actually questioned that, they were called a unionist. When we were locked down during COVID, and the SNP representatives for Westminster had ran up, the expenses that ran into well over near enough £2.5 million. No one knows, because no one knows why, because you weren't allowed to leave the house. You were called all these things. We have this mentality that has been shaped, moulded, and quite frankly engineered by the SNP, that if you challenge their failings, if you challenge their policies and how they handle things, they have enough crybabies dispersed throughout the country to call you a unionist, to call you, a conspiracy theorist, to hit you with, you can't really be Scottish. And this is part of the sickness that we have to weed out in this country, because they have divided households and families within every community in Scotland to such a degree that 9 times out of 10 for a lot of people, they don't even want to have a conversation about the problems at the front door. That is a scale of the mentality of problems that these bastard parasites have caused.
No, I'm with you there, mate. This is on a side note, the really weird thing about Scotland, and I don't want to segue too much off like the video I've got on screen here, but just really briefly, let me share this. Just let me get this up. Here we go. This will be my first butchering. Share this screen. Right. So obviously there's been this sort of, I don't know who the fuck's behind it or whatever, right? Reclaim our flag, right? Obviously this is just The Guardian, but the principle remains, because whether it's The Guardian or whether it's the mainstream media in general, or whether it's our ball-bag progressive politicians, whatever it may be, they all come out with the same nonsense. So it doesn't really matter So for somebody to push back, oh, you're using the Guardian as a source. I said, well, it doesn't matter. They all say the same shit. Anyway, so the saltire has become a cultural battleground in Scotland as tensions rise over asylum housing, right? But just coming down, because it's just a little bit here that it's fucking remarkable. And only in Scotland can something like this occur, right? Let me get it. It's just should be. Where the fuck did it go?
Sorry. Can you just go up just the tiniest wee bit, like to below that video?
Yeah, I've got it anyway. Yeah, there's it. Yeah, what?
No, I think it's further thingy. It
Further
says
up.
something about John Swinney.
Oh, right, yeah. I'll get to that in a second, right? But this is the bit I was on about, right? The sudden appropriation of Scotland's national flag to promote anti-immigration activism has shocked politicians, particularly Scottish nationalists. Make that make sense. So Scottish nationalists, air quote, are offended by people putting out flags, presumably under the precursor or, with the idea in mind that they want Scotland to be at least semi-Scotland for the Scots. How dare they do such a thing? How evil, how very racist, and dare I say, how very nationalistic of them. Oh, we can't be having that here in Rainbow Unicorn Land, says the Scottish nationalists. Nowhere else does this happen, eh? Nowhere else does this fucking happen, eh?
What they've done is though, right before that, in a direct parallel with the Operation Raise the Colour movement, which was co-opted by the St George's Cross in England, right? So what they've done is they've used that bit before they've added that bit with the saltire to say that's where that stems from. That stems from colonial, nationalist, bigoted tendencies, because this is pretty much what we've seen. And I said this to you as well at the time when we were talking about this. In 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, the saltire flag was a political football that was rebranded and politicised to the SNP. That was pretty much get it up, you England. That was the whole crux of that. It was used as a political tool to basically berate a nation, and they can say what they want. I'm very proud of my saltire. I'm very proud of my lion rampant, and they ain't telling me to take it down. They can put on my own day what they want, and my flag's only going down. But the point being, right, now we're at a point, regardless if it's for Raise the Colours, regardless of whatever it is, right, if people are allowed to put rainbow fucking colours on public walkways, if they're allowed to have all these other flags, Palestinian flags, European Union flags, up on windows and lampposts and whatnot, all year round, and nobody bats an eyelid, then why is our national flag being so bastardised off the national government? I'll tell you what it is. Simply. But it says here on screen, John Swinney, Scotland Nationalist First Minister. We
so
have
fucking
heard,
gay.
it is, mate, it's beyond cringe, because we've had that wee bitch that's got the bowl cut hair that literally looks like a fucking soup bowl, right? A hairstyle that you could literally put a ladle of soup in and drink it, has come out and said in previous years, I hate the term Scottish Nationalist Party, because it's not inviting, it's not friendly enough, it's not welcoming enough. Regardless of how you feel about it, Nicola, regardless how Swinney feels about it, regardless about how Humza Canny Ride a Scooter feels about it, it's our national flag, and we will fly our flags at John O'Groats, down at the borders, east coast to west coast, on the islands, Tapa Shetland. We will flag it when we want, how long we want, and nobody will bat an eye about it, because it's our flag, it's not the politicians' flag, and everybody uniting behind the saltire, a national symbol of identity, unifying a racial ethnic group of native people to its soil, and they truly understand that's the gravity, that is the consequence of that flag unison flying all over the fucking country. It's not because it scares asylum seekers, it's not because it scares we fucking Sikhs or Punjabis or whoever it is they come to, with all due respect. It's because if people can get behind that unilaterally, up and down behind the country, they Marxists understand one thing. If people keep pulling in the one direction, they won't be able to contain it. And it's organic. That's the best part about it. It's not manipulated, it's not engineered, it's fucking organic, because it's people with normal schemes doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, on a side note, just briefly, before I sort of elaborate on what you said there, like, momentum comes just as quick as momentum dies. So, like, maybe in a couple of months, the protests might die down the same way that the momentum regarding flags might die down. But regardless, whether or not somebody chooses to put up a fucking Scottish saltire, right, it's their right to do so, because, again, it's their flag and this is our country. So, I mean, it's just, I've found it a complete insult to my intelligence to listen to some of these absolute shy fucking, I mean, redacted. I'm trying my best, in 2025 to refrain from being too vulgar. But it is hard. But, these people, they really do beg belief at times, because, to your point, as you say, for years, they have weaponized that flag for their own gain in relation to their crap, relating to their EU/independence movement from 2014 onwards, going so far as to bastardize our flag with their little fucking gay saltires that had EU stars on it and whatnot, right? But how dare somebody with legitimate nationalistic views, or even just kind of touching the surface of nationalistic tendencies, how dare they fly that flag? And then you get the cringy sort of accusations. Again, going back to what we were on about earlier on scapegoating migrants, one of the other ones I've heard in relation to the flags is people are doing it to try and intimidate refugees. I'm sure Tamwar and Abdul are fucking quivering because people are flying saltires or tying them to lampposts. Pull the other one. But again, it's just the mind slop of modern day progressive Scotland, quite clearly, when this is the level of discourse that comes from our so-called nationalistic government, right? But on the topic again of this, listen
today, it has changed the character of their community, and not for the better. And we need a government that focuses on the needs of communities like those in Dumfriesshire, and not allowing more and more people into our country in breach of the law. Britain, Deputy Presiding Officer, is our home, not a hotel for those trying to enter this country illegally. But sadly, for this SNP government, this First Minister and this self-indulgent Parliament, they will simply not understand that.
I cannot let this debate pass, Presiding Officer, without challenging something that Craig Hoy said. Now, I was going to do a bit of a light-hearted thing about public sector reform and the explanation in detail that I gave him at the Finance Committee this morning, but I want to turn to something that Craig Hoy said. He said the character of Dumfries has changed and is changing. And I want to know what he means by character. What characteristics is Craig Hoy referring to?
Well, I'm going to take an absolute punt here, because I can remember a video that went out about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, with a bunch of, I'm going to say, they weren't European, because a guy was challenged at his door for 3 guys that worked in a kebab shop, and that was done in Dumfries. And she knows exactly where he's getting it when he's saying things like that, because for better or worse, and this is something that, these people within the SNP know themselves, that when you have a high forced rate of people coming into the country, and they're getting into, and Dumfries is a lot smaller than Glasgow, mind you, it's going to change the character, it's going to change the way that the city functions, it's going to change the identity of the city, it's going to change the customs of the city, and it's going to change the behaviours of the city. It's not exactly a complete deranged out there, fucking whataboutery from somewhere in the ether comment to make. And I find that there's absolute ignorance, but deliberate pandering to, I want you to refrain or rephrase exactly what you mean, because quite frankly, I can't beat the point that you've made, which is obviously blatant obvious, that Dumfries has become a shithole because of this. And it goes back to something that I read, and it was Aristotle, and it was talking about a multi-ethnic society, and essentially it turns into chaos because you have all the different, that I just laid out, you had all these different belief systems, all these different ideas, all these different values, all these different ways of life. And for democratic, quote-unquote, democratic societies that become multi-ethnic and multicultural, they always turn into chaotic systems, becoming failed cities in failed states. And Aristotle knew that back in the day. And I'm going to take a punt and say Aristotle knew more than this fucking lassie that looks like she should be working in a school dinner hall.
Well, yeah, but again, it goes a long way to, again, sort of tie into what we've been saying, whether it's the accusations of racism, whether it's the accusations of scapegoating these people and whatnot. We're at a point now in society where you can't even bring these things up at all, even if you're coming at it from a genuine place of concern, even if you try your damnedest to word it correctly and it appears very milquetoast in nature, right? It doesn't matter. You're going to be continuously labelled as far-right, racist, etc., etc. How dare you point out the changing demography of where you live? How dare you do that? I mean, to your point, though, like naturally, irrespective of whether or not they're asylum seekers, air quote unquote, or whether or not it's legal migration, it stands to reason that if you continue to allow the trend to continue, eventually the scales tip, the demography changes, the population becomes somewhat diluted, right? And it's no fucking secret that as time has gone on, there's certain parts of Scotland that are beginning to resemble parts of England. And it's no secret that for the last 20 years, year upon year, the Scottish population has continued to increase population-wise due to immigration alone, while our fucking births decline. Right? It stands to reason, eventually, you're going to start to see noticeable changes in places. But even to this day, you're not allowed to say these things because if you do, you're racist. But just to finish this video here, the guy cucks. Believe it or not, he started off good, but he ends up cucking. Of course he cucks. So here we go.
Has changed and is changing. And I want to know what he means by character. What characteristics is Craig Hoy referring to?
Craig Hoy. Happily to respond to the Minister, because I spent this summer out talking to real voters and the real world, and they are very, very concerned about the community effects of long-term asylum hotels at the heart of their community. People should not be staying there for 2 to 3 years. That is not a long-term solution, and it is for the Scottish Government and the UK Government now to answer how they intend to solve this problem. Cabinet Secretary.
Craig Hoy is going to talk about changed characteristics. He needs to explain what characteristics he is talking about, because that is the dangerous rhetoric that brings what we don't want to this place. And
so when she says dangerous rhetoric that they don't want in that place, right? Obviously, she must be insinuating that people who are advocating for Scottish towns and cities to be Scottish, as people that are advocating for people that share these same values and same traditions and same belief systems should be somewhat not represented in Parliament. Which, surely to God, that's what she's not insinuating, because that would be somewhat fascist. It would be suppression. It would be censorship of different ideals, which is something I thought that she would support. But nonetheless, right, we don't want to open that kind of worms because she's a fucking moron. Pardon her language, but she is. She's an absolute weaponised moron, like many people that, serve within the SNP. But he should have stood firm there. He should have stood firm and says, well, no, do you know what? This is exactly how it is. Because see, even, and we know the chamber speaker, it's like, retract that statement or leave. I'd have gladly walked out of there with my head held high, knowing I've said my piece for my local constituents. I've said my piece and, stood by what I'm represented. I'm paid to come and do. And this is the thing with the political structure, because it goes back to this thing that we've spoke time and time about as well, and people in the chat probably spoke about it time and time again as well as your day outside. When you allow these people to have these terminologies and these buzzwords that they use as weapons against you from allowing yourself to elaborate or speak in conversation, you only allow them to win by giving them any sort of power. And people in Parliament, people that are paid, are all corrupt as far as I'm concerned, right? But I'm going to play devil's advocate here, which isn't a nice thing to say, but I am. He's come in to this to raise a point. She's came back with that standard, quite frankly, regurgitated copy and paste response, and he's folded. So right away, what he's demonstrated in Parliament is that he's not got the capacity or the balls to stand on ground and handle business and get paid for the thing that he was fucking elected to do, which again falls back into the problem that the parliamentary system isn't going to resolve the issues that affect real Scottish people.
And then, I mean, there's more, and I will get to that. I mean, I've got a lot of wee tiny clips, but I mean, it's like a concurrent theme that seems to be taking place here, whether it's in day-to-day life, but more so in our parliament and in the media and whatnot. You can't even bring up these genuine issues. I mean, whether or not Craig Hoy, that Tory guy, genuinely believes what he's saying is irrelevant. He brought up a point that should have been acknowledged, but instead of that, he's just met with accusations, and that sort of translates into the, day-to-day life and whatnot. People that are outside these hotels protesting about illegal immigration and whatnot, right? They're met with the same accusations as well. But what annoys me, on a side note, about a lot of the people that are at these protests is the fact that they do exactly what Craig Hoy did. And that's we're not racist. We don't mind legal migration. It's just illegal migration. It's the problem. That's what's changing our culture. And that's what's changing our country. No, it's not. It's not. Because the way he cut there was embarrassing. He brings up a change of character in his local area. And then when he's pressed on it, he turns around and says, it's because of illegal migration. What, like a couple of hundred people in a fucking hotel? That's changing the character of where you come from, Come on. I mean, the reality is, it is an issue, but the bigger issue is legal migration in and of itself. And I think that's something that I would love to see hammered home by at least one person in that parliament, because I think if somebody had the fucking balls to do so, it might give people a bit of confidence in day-to-day life to start saying the same thing. But for the time being, we have to sort of accept this shit for what it is, unfortunately. But more power to the people that are taking to the streets and whatnot, because it is good to see. Whether or not I agree with them when it comes to their civic nationalist type rhetoric, no, I'm not really on board with that. But, it's a good start. Here's another one. I'll get this right. Fucking hell.
Can I say something? I don't know if you're aware of this, mate, right? But it's just what you're talking about hotels. Now, from my understanding, I think people coming into the country had to be housed in a hotel for 58 days, between
56 days, aye.
Right, so what they've done is they've obviously brought this in to basically call that the early integration period or something, but now they're cutting that down to like 24 days.
Even Susan...
Yeah, which is what's exacerbating the issues in Glasgow. But again, they're blaming the Home Office for that. They're saying, the reason that there's so many asylum seekers that are homeless is because of the Home Office, Like, even if they were allowed to stay in their hotels for 56 days, it's not going to change the problem. The problem is that they are here in the first place when there's nowhere to house them, You can't say that, because in saying that, again, it gives ground to the opposition, etc. And that's what this is about as far as these dickheads are concerned. They can't bear to admit that potentially the shit they've been advocating for years is becoming somewhat detrimental. But here we go. There's another one.
Aitken, the SNP leader of Glasgow Council, says the number of asylum seekers is unsustainable. Peter Smith's ITV report highlights the farce of illegal migrants being prioritised for housing over legal migrants and Scots. Is it time the First Minister was honest with the people and admits that illegal immigration is crippling services in Glasgow?
First Minister.
I've set out my concern about where the debate about migration is going, and I honestly don't think that the contribution of Sandesh Gulhani helps us one bit to try to make sure our country remains cohesive and united as it has always been on these questions. Now, the issues that are faced in the city of Glasgow are fundamentally faced, and Councillor Aitken has made this point clear, because of the inadequacy of the approach of the United Kingdom Home Office. Now, that's where there needs to be a realisation of the implications of these issues, and I encourage the Home Office to engage with Glasgow City Council on these particular questions. So I want to make it absolutely clear to anyone that's listening that I think Scotland is a welcoming country. Under my leadership, it will remain a welcoming country, and that should be something that we are proud of as a country.
I mean, it's just so homosexual. I'm sorry, it is homosexual, effeminate, beta male bullshit, time after time. But again, another example of somebody raising a serious or legitimate concern, courtesy of their constituents, and it's met with, I don't think that type of rhetoric is acceptable in our parliament. How dare you? Like, what? At what point, man? Oh, these fucking people here. Anyways, oh, fucking hell.
I didn't know that Rod Stewart was serving in the Scottish Parliament.
Oh, man. Oh,
But do you know something, mate? It's nothing that you would honestly, you wouldn't expect anything different for John Swinney.
No.
To turn around and say that Scotland has always been a welcoming country is like turning around and saying that there is sharks that swim about in outer space. It's an absolute ludicrous, whataboutery, bullshit, made up, articulated lie. Now, here's the thing, right, with the Scottish history. We have been fighting off many different groups of people for the day dot of its inception as a country. We have had clans that have fought amongst each other for the longest time for a wee bit of fucking couple of acres on the land since day dot. And when we look back at our history as a people and we see that there's a lot of bloodshed, there's one thing that the politicians clearly, and it's not even that they're naive, they're clearly trying to sweep under the carpet, that came at a cost and a toll. And the cost and the toll is the inheritance of which you stand upon. This is our birthright because we have earned it. There is no other way of putting it. Our people have gave blood, sweat, tears. They have worked the soil. They have built the crops. They have worked the land. They have built houses. They have laid the roads. Nobody else done that. That was us that done that. Nobody else has got the right to be here. That's not a hateful thing to say. That's just straight up fact. If Mr. Swinney had purchased a bit of land, built a house on it, and then I decided to rock up to his house, go into his house, make myself a sandwich, go into his bathroom and lay a log, he wouldn't be happy with that because he would be saying, well, you're interfering, you've come into my house very much in an unwelcoming manner. You've been uninvited. I would wish you to leave. I can't then turn and say, well, Mr. Swinney, you're very unwelcoming. That's very somewhat, BS that you've said there. This is the ludicrous of what these people are now spewing, because the bottom line of it is, whether it be Scotland, whether it be England, whether it be Wales, not Northern Ireland, or whether it be Australia or Finland, nobody is entitled to go into another nation and just set up shop and live. That was a very unheard of thing for years and years and years, and people respected nations, people respected sovereignty, people respected borders, and it just seems to be within the last 50 years or something that this is a thing that obviously needs to be challenged, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And the mere people that cuck and buy into that rhetoric and don't hold people like Slippery Swinney accountable for him, isn't really an insult to you? And I'm saying this to people that are listening. It's an insult to the people that came before you, that gave you the freedom, that gave you the right of land, that gave you everything that you're sitting listening to this at this moment in time. They went through hardship, they went through endurance for you to be on your inheritance. And these people that sit in Holyrood, that don't represent the Scottish people, they represent legislation that comes from the United Nations, the European Union. They represent the global portion of everything that goes on in the world. They don't represent Scotland. They want to strip that from you. You better stand up. You better be upright. You better hold these people to account. And when the time comes, you better be prepared. Because whether it be in Scotland, whether it be in America, whether it be anywhere in the Western nations, they're going to come for you and your rights, and you better be prepared, because these bastards have been insinuating this language to normalise it so that it isn't a shock when it comes, because they're going to try and do it subtly, and they're going to do it to people that's impressionable minded.
Amen. Amen. And again, the really sad thing about Scottish society in the modern era is the fact that the very people who are the face of our sort of self-implosion, they're brandished as nationalists. The very people who are supposedly there with our interests at heart, are the very fucking people who have signed us up to umpteen agreements, and even in the last fucking decade or so, blaming Westminster for their failings, signing us up to every single treaty going in terms of United Nations shit, sustainable developments, climate change goals, etc., etc. This is the SNP's modus operandi, And then if anybody actually says something that you would expect the SNP to say, they get called far right. Here's another example. I mean, I love giving people a bit of brain rot on a Sunday evening. Have you missed me? I should have fucking missed this shit. That's for sure. Here's another one, and this is what I'm all about. Honestly, like this gay shit. I know I'm probably going to get this stream for saying that. Can't say that in 2025. What are you doing? Oh my god! I don't know how else to describe it. Just listen. Oh man!
To hijack our country's flag. Racist graffiti is starting to appear in my local areas, including Sink the Boats. One of my constituents was told the other day, get back on their boat. Many in Maryhill, from all backgrounds, have reached out to me with huge concern in offering their love, their support and their solidarity for all those, including immigrants and asylum seekers, who have made their life in Maryhill. Will the First Minister show his solidarity with the people of Maryhill, the vast majority of whom are indeed welcoming, tolerant and inclusive? And what practical support can the Scottish Government offer our communities?
First Minister.
President, I could not have expressed that better than Mr Doris has expressed that point, and I agree with him that the national flag of Scotland has always been represented as an inclusive flag, which is there to draw all of us together in Scotland as an essential part of our...
And then he finishes that just at the end. This fucking word.
Practical support to community cohesion that we offer, because we believe, as Mr Doris does, that Scotland is best served by being an inclusive, welcoming country. It has been in the past and it must be in the future. So, honestly, I mean, do you think that single men in the modern era go into Tinder and they put in their bio, I'm inclusive? Who says that, man? This is the state of our fucking political discourse. Inclusivity. What makes you inclusive? You are judged. Every fibre of your being is judged on whether or not you are or if you are not inclusive. Are you inclusive enough? Our national flag represents all that there is to be inclusive. Oh yeah, I'm sure Robert the Bruce and William Wallace, etc., way back in the day, they were all about inclusivity. I'm sure when they marched, when they were fending off the Vikings back in the day, that was done out of inclusivity. I'm sure when they were fighting the English on and off throughout the fucking centuries, that was all done in the name of inclusivity. And here we are in 2025, where what constitutes Scottish nationalism is whether or not you are gay and or inclusive. It's just, who says that shit, man? Can the First Minister agree with me that the saltires make you inclusive? I'm sorry, it's so fucking nonsense.
You have to go back to 832. It's the battle at Athelstan Ford.
It was very inclusive, I remember it.
That's the first time the saltire shows up. So the saltire's been about for a very long time. In 1320, Scotland has a Declaration of Broth. It's a full conversion as well at that point, folks, because you have to admit that there wasn't always a Christian presence within the lands of Scotland. There's some, but not to the extent it is today. But 1320, nonetheless, Declaration of Broth converts Christianity. We have St Andrew appointed at that point as a national saint of Scotland, who becomes the apostle. So when John Swinney turns around and says our national flag has always been a welcoming flag, no, our national flag is pretty much a symbol of identity and heritage to the land. And that pretty much over the years has been desecrated on a level that's beyond blasphemy, it's beyond degrading, it's beyond insulting. We have practices being played out every single day in this country that is an abomination to that flag. We have people practicing customs in this country that are not Christian. We have people pushing educational materials to children that is to take them away from the faith. And we have people like this absolute half-wit on screen trying to allude that anything in the sort of universalistic nature is all in one and the same. And it's not. It couldn't be any further from the truth. And this isn't a stream for me to go on and talk about Christianity and give a complete rebuttal of this fucking gross and quite frankly bullshit pish that I have to listen to on most days. But it's about time that the people in that parliament actually get educated on what our country is, what our national emblems are, and what our people and who they are actually belong to. Because I tell you this absolutely flat out, Mr. Swinney and your wee minions and your wee decrepit pink and purple and blue-haired Emilys and fucking Tim or Tinas or whatever they choose to identify as these days, you're all wrong. You're continuing to be wrong. And you can push all this filth in the world as much as you want. You're going to lose every single time. That isn't a prediction. That isn't to be off the cuff. That is a fucking spoiler alert.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on the saltire thing, well, I'll let Hamza speak for himself. But I mean, yeah, to your point, it's like if they didn't have such a control of the narrative in terms of whether it's media, academia, or just in general in parliamentary settings and whatnot, like if they didn't have such a control or a grip on discourse, then they wouldn't be able to get away with half the BS they come away with, because to most people who actually have more than two brain cells to rub together, they just look like a bunch of absolute wet wipes. Hence why I keep bringing up time and time again that it's a bit gay, for lack of better terminology. What I mean by that is it's just, it doesn't come across as remotely sound-minded, for lack of better terms. No, I can't bear to fucking believe that any of these people believe, well, some of them will, but like, how can any like normal man stand in our parliament and come away with the crap that they come away with? And on top of that as well, I've often wondered, like, some of these people, albeit yes, they're constrained by their party and whatnot, they can't really go against the grain, and the parties are obviously all to a certain extent constrained by all this fucking new legislation that's been pumped down from the UN and whatnot. We get all that, right? It's a pantomime parliament, but there must be some people in that parliament that genuinely can see the issues that we can see, albeit they just, for the time being anyway, can't really speak out about it for whatever reason. I mean, I don't really see why they can't, you know? Surely if you're genuinely concerned about the future of your country, fucking risk it, you know? If you get fired, so what, you know? But they don't, for now, anyway. But that's what I'd fucking do if I was not parliament. I'm never getting up parliament, but I can't fathom the idea that nobody in our parliament, nobody, not even one person, genuinely is seeing what's going on and thinking, what the fuck? You know, that's concerned me a bit. But, you know, even the likes of Kate Forbes, I think we had this discussion years ago on our stream, like Kate Forbes is one of a few in our parliament that actually has kids, you know? Is she not concerned for her children's future? The shit that she's, you know, effectively advocating? I don't get it.
The thing is with Kate Forbes, right? I remember we've spoke about her several times, and we'd spoke about the fact that, you know, she was pretty much pissed on at a height from Hamza and these backers because she was a Christian female. And see, the longer that times went on, you know, Kate Forbes has demonstrated that see, as long as she is in a high-profile job that pays well, where she can escape herself and keep her own children protected and excluded out with that machine, she is more than happy and comfortable with that. Whereas someone like myself, looking at that system and going, I couldn't put my head down at night, whether it be, you know, children in my street or whether it be children that live in fucking Orkney, I couldn't put my head down as a man representing people and think that that's a-okay. That this joker that you've got on stream, and that's let's be absolutely real here. That's exactly what this man is. This man is quite literally a grade A failure of a dad, failure of a husband, failure as a politician, failure as a citizen, failure of a life. This man has literally failed in every single aspect of working life in Scotland, and yet, strangely enough, has found nothing other than promotion after promotion after promotion. And the only way, and the best part about that is the people that give him the promotions, white, right? But that aside, he has had the privilege to be in a position where he could have positively made change. What has he done? He has fragmented communities. He has ruined lives. He decimated the travel system. He decimated the healthcare system. He decimated a lot of infrastructure when he was in charge of the country. And the bottom line of it is he's equally in the same book, and this might sound harsh to Kate Forbes, but he's equally in the same book as Kate Forbes, because these people put their head down, take the shekels, because that's what they are. And the sad thing is, politicians aren't the only people that do that shit. There is people on the left, people on the right, people that's in the middle, or whatever they're doing. See, as long as people have money, they're happy. Doesn't matter, because they can switch off. This is part of the problem. Money. You take the system away and you bring in something that they can't operate with, and you will find who stands upright and who doesn't. And it's a total broken world, total broken system. And I'm sorry for going on a tangent, because that bastard right there boils my blood, that I don't even think he's a man. I genuinely think he is like an alien life form in a fucking in a human body. Because that right there is a poor excuse of a fucking human being and a man.
It's funny you mentioned aliens. I fucking made a video earlier on about Margie Chapman, and I literally titled it, I think Margie Chapman's an alien. But the one thing you didn't mention there was the hate crime bill. Yeah, that was his little baby, albeit, yeah, granted, I don't really think that any of these politicians, whether they're first ministers or just ministers in general, are genuinely in charge of the shit that gets put through our parliament. However, he was the face of the hate crime bill. You know, he knows what he's doing. He's always known what he has been doing. He's very good at what he does in terms of race baiting and whatnot. You know, choosing to hide behind his identity when it suits him. And to this day, he still does it. Yeah.
He stays up in Bury Ferry in Dundee. He represented Pollock, which is on the south side of Glasgow, 78 to 85 miles away from Glasgow. Easy, right? And in Scotland, in any sort of society,
in the hustle and bustle before his placement landed him.
And you go, right, how are you going to get to work? Oh, well, I could get the bus, I could get the train. Right, where is it you live? And I turn around and tell them. They're going to look and go, you physically can't get the job based on how far you live. But a politician who's meant to sit in a community, live in a community and represent the community, and he's doing that for 75 miles away, and then telling everybody in Pollock that you've got an unfair advantage because you're white. It's absolute grotesque manipulation at best.
No, you're not wrong, huh? And I mean, obviously, like, I don't want to get too segued into like other things in relation to like his white speech and what it actually meant in terms of like, you know, proportionate representation and whatnot. But again, another example of, you know, the way that the narrative is controlled in terms of the fact that even to this day, his speech and an asshole Sarwar's speech and all the other pricks that came away with similar shit and have done so since, they're always met with sort of understanding and compassion and whatnot. You know, for example, there was a documentary that came out a few years ago called Black and Scottish, and one of the main takeaways of this oxymoronically titled documentary was that racism was rife in academical settings in Scotland, and their proof for this was that 4% of the Scottish population was BAME, but 4% of the teachers in Scotland were not BAME. henceforth that indicates structural inequalities, etc. That's the same shit Hamza was coming away with his white speech. You know, every position of power being held by somebody who is white. Why would that be? I wonder why that would be, Hamza. Maybe it's because it's fucking overwhelmingly white for now. But no, we can't have that. We can't state the obvious. It has to be clear-cut proof that there's racism that is rife across our society. Yeah? And I mean, it still goes on to this day. But you mentioned Orkney as well, hence why I just took down the video of Hamza. I mean, who really wants to hear Hamza crying about racism in our flag, you know? But Orkney, I don't know if you've seen this video. This was fucking months ago I posted this, mate. I don't even think you were about at that point. But critical race theory, you know, before we part ways for Sunday, you know, we'll get on to the critical race theory stuff. My favourite subject, apart from all things sustainable, okay? So put your rainbow-coloured armbands on and let's let's go for a swim. I don't even know why I said that. Fuck's sake.
In the hustle and bustle of Kirkwall, Theo Oweme found himself worlds apart from his native Nigeria. Coming to Britain to teach, he gained his qualification first in Glasgow, before his placement landed him in Orkney. 15 years later, and he's still here. Theo teaches religion, moral and philosophical studies, and he's invited me to his classroom for a lesson on addressing racism and discrimination.
So where's your classroom?
Oh, just
here.
That's my classroom.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben.
Yeah, hi, guys. That's Ben. He's joining us for today's lesson. Just
ignore me.
Ignore him. Behave as if he's them.
I'm
a fly on the wall.
In 2021, Theo won the first Saroj Lal Award for his outstanding work in challenging discrimination and promoting equality. He believes that education is a collective responsibility and that the award is not just for him, but for his whole school community.
Today's lesson is a continuation of what we've been exploring, looking at the fact that racism does cause suffering, that racism does ruin lives. But you see, when we label ourselves not racist, what it means is the fact that we are not part of the solution. Like I have always said, it's better for us to be anti-racist, which means that we are actively working towards educating folks on the ills of racism. Because when we continue to chip at racism, it loses its power.
Do you know why I was laughing there?
Well, I mean,
when I was watching that video, the first thing I noticed when you walk in the class is if you think the camera's looking at the wall with the whiteboard, which I don't know if you can call it a whiteboard anymore, and you've got the picture of Bob Marley, and then right after that you see the rainbow flag, and then it turns at the bottom of the class, and it's got a picture of an African individual, and it says, "What's his story?" Then it turns around and you see somebody kind of standing up at the other side of the wall with a penciled in black individual with a fist raised. And then right next to that, between that individual and the rainbow flag, is the Star of Moloch, which is on the Israel flag. And I just thought that this guy ticks every single box that you would think possible. It's you don't even elaborate after that point, and I mean that politely as I can. It's just absolute garbage. It doesn't even sound like he's trying to address his points in depth. He just says an absolute off-the-cuff comment and goes, "It is better to be anti-racist." Okay, why? And then didn't he expand? And you're like, "Fuck yeah, man!" Like the lights are on, but nobody's at him.
It's not even that. The other thing as well, mate, is like they never actually fucking define racism. You know, like obviously the old textbook definition of racism, we know what it means, right? You just fucking open up any dictionary back in the day. We know what it means, but like obviously they've redefined it now. Hence why they don't say no longer, well, he said it himself. I was like, it's not enough to not be racist. We must be actively anti-racist, you know? All this shit. Obviously, there's a myriad of different definitions of racism now, from structural to environmental, to unconscious, to macro, to micro racism, etc. Like the list is endless, but it all really does just boil down to disparities. So if there's not enough black teachers, racism. You know, if there's not enough black people getting promotions, racism. Not enough black CEOs, racism. You know, everything is racism. Literally everything. And these people, there obviously is an aspect of them gaining, financially speaking, they're gaining from this, they're profiting from this, right? But I think that's a bit of a cop-out to suggest that that's the only reason that they're doing what they're doing. For these people, they are very much in it for themselves and what they are really after, especially when you listen to the likes of Kajida Mohammed and whatnot, who I'm about to play a video of, by the way. You know, they are very, very, very fucking much doing what they're doing because this is all about obtaining power for these people. And they are anti-white. I mean, just call it out. Well, that's what this is. It's critical race theory, anti-white shit. Been talking about it for years, but you know, I mean, I just can't believe it. He goes to fucking Orkney and he's like, "Yo, people, we need to talk about this."
I know, it's that time with Orkney, there's probably about 300 people or something at the domestic stay in that island, and it's probably they probably see more of the shape than what they would do talking amongst themselves, you know, and it's a bit a ludicrous thing to do. But I will say this before you go into that Khadija video, right? And it's like,
wrong one.
with our sincerity, right? Why is nobody ever sat down on like question time or in Parliament or whatever and go, is it no better?
We talked about diversity.
Instead of trying to like namby-pamby these people, is it no better to give them tools to cultivate, to innovate, and shape their own destiny as a people in their own lands?
That'd be nice.
Why is this no like a kind of a simple method to, if you want to call it quote unquote, empowering these people? And the fact that we've got politicians and all these think tanks and non-government organisations and third sector work groups thinking that the only place that they can thrive is in lands across the water that's not native to their own. Why? Like, is it? And we all know what the answer's going to be, right? But why, if we got these people coming in, like, without my ancestors, the castles wouldn't have been built, the theatres wouldn't have been built, all this different shit. You just got all this slavery. We obviously know that that's a whole load of BS, right? But they can't even have the dignity to go after these folks after telling them, you've done all this. You need to come here and profit for this. Gun. There's the tools. Can rebuild it on your own. Innovate. Be your own group of people on your own land. Go and do it. Show the world that yours can fucking thrive. Because we all know exactly where that's going to end up. It's going to end up with nothing but problems and nothing but more human aid. And it would just be refreshing. It wouldn't do anything at all. It wouldn't change your conversation. It wouldn't have any sort of significance. But it would just be refreshing for somebody to ask a simple question like that, along those lines, to a politician or to one of these think tanks, you know, that come there, like that guy, with all due respect to him, and just put it to him like that on camera, just to get the words that come out their mouth, just to get that raw response. Because do you know something? I think just hearing that absolute, well, we can't because of, and then go through a list of deflections, mate, that would be absolute fucking gold to the ears. Truly, it would be.
Yeah, it would be. But see, the problem, and I mean, I have said this in the past, but it's like they still use the words of old, but yet when they use those words, that they've got like modernized fucking definitions for them. So, for example, when they say, "Oh, we're just simply trying to quell racism," that's not what they're doing. You know, because they've obviously redefined racism. So I presume if they were ever to actually be challenged, all they would simply say is, "Oh, well, are you racist? We're simply opposing racism." You know, I mean, bear in mind, a couple of years back now, remember, fucking, what year was it? 2022 or 3? I don't know. When there was a bit of momentum going on at the time regarding the critical race theorists on Twitter at the time, and a lot of people were starting to call them out on their shit. And like, obviously, they were using the stuff that I'd been posting at the time. They were subscribers of mine, but like, I never fucking. It's not like I created a movement or anything. By the way, I'm not saying that, but like, people were doing exactly what I was suggesting to do, and the consequence of that was for the SNP at their conference to come out and completely go nuclear and call us all white supremacists and etc. Yeah, so you can't actually win when it comes to challenging these people. But unfortunately, I think what's more a pressing issue in relation to this stuff is the fact that most people still to this day don't realize it's going on, you know. And I mean, I've been singing about this till I've been blue in the face at times, and to this day, it's still going on, unchallenged, unchecked, unnoticed, and barely fucking addressed to begin with. But Kajida Mohammed's back. This shit, right?
Around anti-racist practice. And there was some resistance there as well in terms of resistance by our students, but even so from some of our own teacher education colleagues, ignoring issues of racism, power and whiteness within teacher education, within education more broadly. Actually, I'd written a piece for the Runnymede Trust in 2020, where I'm arguing that whiteness and racism are conversations that are missing within Scottish education.
I mean, even that, I mean, see when I hear stuff like that, on a genuinely serious note, see when I hear stuff like that, that boils my fucking blood. Like, it genuinely boils my blood. Right? And I mean, this isn't even a case of like whether or not you've got kids. I mean, I do have a son, right? But even if I didn't have a son, even if I didn't have any children, this would still boil my blood because we have a dickhead, right? And I'm going to refrain from saying something that could get the stream nuked, but we have a dickhead sitting here banging on about why we need to do more to incorporate discussions about whiteness into our fucking schools, right? And bear in mind, this cunt, that's what she is a cunt, right? And I will say that word very eloquently so, right? She is in charge of, or she's the sort of head now, or one of the main members of the General Teaching Council for Scotland, which is effectively the equivalent of academical law, right? So whatever the General Teaching Council of Scotland says schools must do, lo and behold, the schools must do, right? She has major influence there. She's also, right, on many of the different boards, Scottish parliamentary boards, for reforming our education system to adopt the very crap she's talking about right now, right? The Building Racial Literacy Programme, etc., all about reforming our academia to adopt critical race theory. Why? Because George Floyd died, right? So bear that in mind when this woman speaks this utter shit. And again, what we were speaking about on the phone earlier on the day, right? This crap makes no sense in Scotland because they have taken the models, the critical race theory shit from America, and they're copy and pasting it into Scottish settings where it makes no sense. Because up until very recently, we were just known as Scots. Now all of a sudden we're white Scottish, black Scottish, biracial Scots, etc., etc. The shit doesn't work here. It shouldn't work here. But they are making it so it will be incorporated going forward. Right? Before you even jump in any further, I'll just play a wee bit more.
And we've come some way since then, where we boldly mention that terminology. We talk openly about critical race theory, but that lack of diverse recruitment is still very much an issue here in Scotland to challenge some of those stereotypes. But for me, this is really close to my heart in terms of the racial literacy and teacher educators, you know, and it's, for me, it's an essential part of the component, not an optional part of it. How racially literate are we? Truly, you've mentioned a teacher purpose, and this is
anyway,
where
that's enough of that bit, right? Oh God, critical. But this is the thing, though, mate. I was saying years ago that this was critical race theory. And now these people are becoming so confident within themselves that they just say it themselves now. Because for the longest time, they hid behind the facade that this was simply anti-racism. You heard it there yourself. She just said it herself, critical race theory. You know? They're saying it themselves now. I mean, I don't know how fucking more obvious I need to make it for people. I get it that my channel's not the be-all and end-all. I don't have the clout of some of the other people in our so-called fucking movement. But see, as far as Scottish political commentary is concerned, still to this day, hear hee-haw about this shit, fucking nothing, right? Why? I don't get it. Why? I don't know. You know, is it not an adequate enough soundbite? I don't get it. You know, I mean, come on. These people, this program, this shit is not just in high schools in Scotland. It's not just in universities and colleges in Scotland. It is now in our primary schools. It is now in nursery settings, but it's fine. We'll just talk about Kate Middleton pretending to have cancer. You know, we'll just talk about things that are fucking irrelevant to our country. You know, hey ho. I'm starting to get annoyed now. I'm going to shut the fuck up. Like,
no, I'm laughing at Jojo's comment there. It just slotted in perfectly with your fucking input. But do you know something, mate? Right? This is the thing, right? 2 points. The first one is for a lot of really like thinking people and looking at that and listening to her. There's no other way to suppose put this, because the optics is we're going to dismantle racism and fight that with racism. Because that's essentially what it is when she's going on to things about anti-whiteness and about making people, you know, being uncomfortable isn't harmful. Right, okay. And that's the education material that everybody just seen there on the screen. So on one side of the conversation, that's a perfectly A-okay, whether it be a teacher, whether it be a student, whether it be practiced and spoke about amongst people, because again, it's an educational piece, so you can pretty much speak about that anywhere with no repercussions. However, on the flip side of that, if you actually spoke about promoting whiteness and you actually spoke about what it means to be Scottish as an ethnic group of people, that would make people uncomfortable, and because it makes people uncomfortable, that's when they can challenge and you can get done with the hate crime bill. And this goes back to what we're talking about with the flags earlier on, because the flag is a symbol, it is a national symbol of a people from a bordered country, a sovereign people with a racial ethnic identity that is to unify, that is to be the flag bearer, the unison point for said people. And what you've got here is you've got a lot of wormy, weaselly infiltrators that are coming in with a cultural race theory, critical race theory, with our Marxist cultural tactics, with our cheap pseudoscience and mental gymnastic approach. And the sad thing is, mate, you know, in many cases, but not just to Scotland or England, is right across the West, a lot of people have gave this too much power. A lot of people have sat back and suppose no challenged this the right way, but ultimately we have let ourselves down. And that just isn't Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, that's right across Western civilization. We have let ourselves down. We have been too comfortable in allowing inches being taken into strides and yards. We have been too comfortable and allowed this rhetoric to go on, it's only a wee bit, it's only that, it's only this. If you've got a poisonous spider in your house, you don't get it a year, you take that out right away. And this is the position that we are in, because we have got too ignorant to the obvious issues that were in front of us. And even though it was done through subtle means, and obviously it was done through mainstream media and the propaganda campaigns and everything else under the sun, unless collectively we as Scots, we as English, we as British or European or whatever, and I'm not saying that as a collective term, I mean that as us as people standing with each other, get on the same page and take back, no the inches, we take back the yards and metres. A lot of this for folks listening, it isn't going to change. I mean, for people that are on the fence, this will hit you harder. This will hit you the most, because the left will be the ones that will come after you. And I don't like using the left-right, labels, But
dichotomy, aye.
Dichotomy, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you, mate.
Big brain, bro.
We have that. But I don't really like using that language. But the point being is the people on the fence are the ones that always get picked off first, and they're the ones that are hardest because unprepared. They're unprepared. And after the ones on the fence go, it's usually the ones on the left because, let's be honest here, with all due respect and all seriousness of consequences, there are certain groups of people that literally have like a coloured theme that represents a packet of fruit pastels that are open to Gazans moving into the UK, and if they were their neighbours, they would be getting launched off of buildings. We know this to be true. That side obviously becomes victims of their own cause. The only people that are openly prepared, mindfully and in spirit, are the people like us that kind of can see the problem where it is, understands the problem and knows the problem. And I don't say that gleefully, I don't say that willfully. I say that because, like, you know, it is what it is, but it's sad at the same time that our countries are so fractured and fragmented through sectarian division and, I suppose, political ideology, which has been pulled down the throat year after year and weaponised to the point where we can't speak about these issues without turning and saying, I'm not a racist, or I don't oppose immigration because, you know, I don't mind the real ones or the genuine ones, or I don't want to live along myself, but I don't mind ones for here and I don't mind ones for there. It's a weaponised guilt, and that needs to stop.
No, I'm with you there, mate. And just to sort of make it clear here in terms of like the final sort of segment, so to speak, of the stream, the last video that I've got, I mean, there is a lot more videos, but cautious of time. But the last one is about immigration from Slippery Swiddy, but more so just briefly on the critical race theory shit. And to your point there as well, I think the issue, and I mean, obviously at times I've got annoyed because of the lack of like attention that seems to be directed towards it. You know, I remember back in the day when I appeared on UNN a couple of times with David Clues, and Bruce Scott, to his credit, used to speak about it quite often on his Twitter, etc. UK column covered it a couple of times. Alex Thompson, David, whatever the fuck his name is, I can't remember the Scottish guy that used to be on there. You know, I went down to a PA conference a couple of years ago. You know, put my neck on the line, so to speak, by doxing myself at the time to a room full of people. I wasn't comfortable doing it, but I did so because I wanted these people to potentially start speaking about it. They don't really, to be honest, you know. I mean, it's up to you what you want to make of that. I don't know, but like, I don't get why this is not something that's spoken about more so. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's water off a duck's back to us. You know, anti-white shit when it's targeting men. Right, we're used to it at this point, but again, let me emphasize, it's children that these people are targeting here. You know, that's my fucking major point of contention. Because LGBT stuff and climate change education, etc. I mean, there's another example of climate anxiety. You know, children are terrified for the future because of political propaganda. You know, children, that's our future. Whether or not you have a child is irrelevant. That is our future. And these fucking people are targeting our youth with their poison, their anti-white bullshit. And it's just going completely unchecked, unchallenged, unfunded by our government. Right under your nose. Right under your fucking nose. And again, let me like re-stress. My channel is pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. You know, a couple of thousand subscribers. There's plenty of people out there who could make a difference. Why are they not doing that? Anyway, just briefly on this, right? Recording of racist incidents is essential, Scottish schools are told. Okay. This is new government guidance for schools on tackling racism. It's timely amid a rise in far-right narratives and hate speech, says a diversity expert. Now, who's the diversity expert in question? Of course, it's one of the bits from back in the day that I used to cover, Nizutu Tamani, a University of Stirling lecturer and co-chair of the Scottish Government's diversity in the teaching profession. Right? She says, schools must take this issue seriously now, as the broader societal context with the rise in far-right narratives and hate speech will only fuel further problems in schools. Okay, so then we actually come to the PDF, and I have like gone through a bit of this in the past, like on a video a couple months back, but like some of the utter pish that they say in this document, addressing racism and racist incidents in school, okay? Fairness and equality and inclusion. We're all about inclusion here in Rainbow Unicorn Land. But just going to come down to, and of course, they bring up UNCRC bullshit. They can't help themselves. You know, every child has the right to grow up. And we've got a right to grow up. Well, thanks for that. You know? But anyway, just coming down. I don't have any, like, or the equivalent of timestamps, but regardless, the work of the government's anti-racism and education program has highlighted that many adversely racialized children, even the language, racialized children, okay, because, you know, race doesn't exist, apparently, and whether or not you believe that is irrelevant, like, this sort of lingo stems from critical race theory, okay, racialized children. Anyway, it then says, this guidance is designed to support schools in developing their approaches to responding to and recording, monitoring racist incidents. Racist incident, by the way, is literally any incident that occurs or allegedly occurs that is perceived to have occurred out of racism. So you could call Little Brown John a dick. Little Brown John might perceive you calling him a dick because he's brown. Boom, it's labeled as a racist incident. That's literally it. Right, but I just wanted to get your take on this. Obviously, they mentioned the Building Racial Literacy Program, which is the critical race theory shit I was just rambling on about there. Right, what we mean by racism, color, nationality, including citizenship, ethnic or national origin. Right, but, and I remember fucking seeing this. Examples of racist behavior. Okay, listen to this shit. Isolating or excluding someone because of the color of their skin, nationality, or ethnicity. And then they put in brackets, ethnicity includes culture, religion, and language. So you could be an ethnic...
So, 2 seconds, right? Just stop there, because this is a very good point, right? You've highlighted that isolating, excluding, and marginalising someone because of the colour of their skin, nationality, or ethnicity. Now, everything that I had laid out previously on the stream about all these organisations and all these funding and all these grants was only tailored to a certain group of people. Yes. So on addressing the racism PDF here right there, that by nature and by design is a racist approach. Yeah, you would think. But they've got that one covered too, mate, because obviously the way that they define racism, you can't be racist to white people, you know, because we hold all the power, apparently. We're the oppressors and we hold all the power. You know, literally what they define the shit as, and you know this yourself. But anyway, this bit here, verbal or non-verbal abuse, including threats, name-calling, gestures, or racist jokes, or using racist language or behavior, including non-verbal communication such as gestures, looks, or written communication. fucking racist looks, racist gestures and racist looks. This is where we're at now. Now, bear in mind, you combine that with the shit about a racist incident. So, Little Brown John, who I mentioned earlier on, you could have stared at him for too long without blinking. He might think that was a racist stare. Boom, written down. It's fucking logged by the teacher as a racist incident. This is where we're at now. This is where we're at. And then they come away just microaggressions. Yeah, of course. Somebody's name. Microaggressions, boy. Mispronouncing someone's name or using an anglicised version of it because it's easier. You know? An anglicised version. Oh, mate. Right. But then I think there was another bit down here that was quite funny. Yeah. Just briefly. Recording racist incidents. There was like some examples. Wait. Racialized, no. Scenarios, it was the scenarios. Where was it? Oh yeah. What do I do if I observe a group of children laughing at an adversely racialized classmate during lunchtime? I mean, what the fuck? What do I do as a school leader? I am unsure that the culture and environment in my school encourages pupils, staff, and families to raise concerns about experiences of racism. Like, what the fuck is happening in our academia? Like, I'll let you have your 2 cents on that, then I'll play the Slippery Swinny video. But fucking Jesus. Racist stares, racist incidents, microaggressions, but again, it's targeting our youth, but it's fine. Do you remember there was a thing that it was either, I'm pretty sure it was like a TV show on Netflix, and it was kind of like the Chinese credit system, right? But there was a part on this, it was like Black Mirror or something like that, it was called. I could be wrong, but maybe like somebody like Jojo or Budgie or that will know it. And if you'd done things that were perceived by the I suppose, you know, your community or whoever it is you're with in that moment in time. They would give you like points, and your wee credit score would go up, right? But there was a part in this when I was watching it at the time, and it was a lassie who's literally like shiting herself because she doesn't have a good score, and she's really anxious and she's really mindful that, you know, she's a bit of a slippery slope, and because she looks anxious, people interpreted that as her basically being unfriendly and literally put her score in the red, to the point where basically she was told that she had to move to the other side of the city. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen in real life, but what I'm saying is it's like subtle things like that that then appear in legislation that they're trying to put into the minds of children. That, like you've just said there, if you were to stare at somebody for a length of time, if you smile at somebody and they go, well, that's an unwanted smile, that's racism. The thing that they're doing here by design, and this isn't, you know, somebody that's come up with this for an absolute laugh. This is like proper mind control. It's the only terminology you can use for it, folks. It's control of the mind, it's control of the tongue, it's control of behaviour, it's control of every single micro aspect of your life, to you become so robotic that you lose character and become alienated for your individualistic self by nature. And that is the design of these things to do. This isn't something that they know that's going to be cracked out and it's going to change in 3 to 5 years. This is a conditioning process which is going to take 10 to 15 years before they see any sort of strides. This right here isn't a threat. This right here is phase 1 conditioning. And like DJ said, they're not doing this to men. They're not doing this to women. They're doing this at children, because when their children become adults, that behaviour becomes normalised, and then it gets passed down generation to generation. That's how these fucking animals work.
Yeah, remember the website, Education Scotland's website, relating to this very topic, and one of their most heinous fucking paragraphs that I remember reading out on one of the streams back the day, and I've also made a video on it subsequently, where it literally says that their intention is they're trying to normalise. What was it? I'm trying to remember it verbatim. They're trying to get away from the normalisation of the white majority in favour of diversity. It was words to that effect. That's what they're doing to kids, trying to make it normal for the ever-increasing amount of diversity that's all around them. But again, children. That's all there is to it. Like, it's just grim. And I mean, I don't really know what else I can fucking say on the matter, to be honest. I have exhausted this topic to no end, and it continues unabated for now. But last thing for the night will be Slippery Swinney. I mean, how could I not? I'm sorry I had to do this to you. It's a bit Slippery Swinney. Here he is here. Sort of does tie into the what we were on about there, but this is more about the immigration aspect of things. Again, this is another normalization process that's taking place as the years are going on. You know, we're told time and time and time again that the only way to sort of solve our demographic time bomb, our demographic crisis, our demographic decline, etc., is to import people. And whether or not you are for or against the concept of immigration, whether or not you are for or against a specific type of immigration, whether that be brown, blacks, you don't want them in, or you don't want Muslims in, or whatever it may be, right? That really is irrelevant to me. My fucking point of contention, which is something I really hope to see in the future, is a talking point that's more often adopted by people in general. Not that I'm a big brain, by the way. There is other people that say the exact same thing I'm about to say, by the way. So don't misconstrue my words. My point is, I want people, and I hope to see it in the future, people to start pushing back by using the simple fucking pushback of saying that if we allow for this to continue, what does it mean for our ethnic group going forward? Because, you know, mathematically speaking, importing people, eventually the scales tip and whatnot. Right? What does it mean for us long term? It's all very well and good for these bell ends to go, oh, we need to open our borders because we're not having enough babies. All right. Instead of getting tongue-tied in the debates about whether or not you're fucking racist, maybe just make them explain what happens to us long term. What is the ramifications long term? Yeah. Anyway.
Consistently
for there to be a distinctive approach taken for migration into Scotland. Now, why is that the case? Well, it's the case because we have a real challenge about the size of our working age population. So when I talk about the challenges in the NHS or in social care, just to take one sector, that's because we are short of working age population in Scotland. This has been a long-term problem. 20 years ago, my predecessor, Jack McConnell, negotiated with the UK government a fresh talent initiative which allowed a different approach to migration to be taken in Scotland compared to the rest of the United Kingdom. And to Jack McConnell's credit, he advanced that argument, looking at the same demographics that I'm looking at now, and to his credit, Tony Blair agreed to that. So that demonstrates that these things are possible. When I raise these issues with the Prime Minister, when my ministers raise these with the Home Office, the door is shut.
Thanks in large part to EU enlargement in the Scottish Parliament, the fear was that Scotland's population would dip below 5 million. Thanks in large part to EU enlargement and the arrival of tens of thousands of young people from countries like Poland, Hungary and the Baltic states, young people who chose to settle here and build their families here, Scotland's population trajectory shifted. Indeed, the 20 years between 2003 and 2023 saw the largest increase in the Scottish population since the 1940s. The lesson? Projections are only projections. The future is not set. It is possible to shift the dial once again. That's why we need a renewed focus on an immigration policy that works for Scotland.
What an absolute bullshit loser take, because you know, I would quite like to see the statistics and where they come for the issue that he raised at the end there, because that doesn't sound about right for me personally. Off the top of my head, for what I can remember looking at things. And folks, I'm not saying I'm always right. I get things wrong, but when I get things wrong, I don't know things. I have always said, and DJ knows this, and there's other people I've streamed where I've been asked a question. I always say, listen, folk, I don't know. That's something I'll need to go away and look at, and then can ask me at a later date, and I'll give you my 2 cents on that. But the point being, right, and you've heard that very clearly there, right, that you had people come there for Poland, you had people come there for Hungary, etc., right? You're like, all right, fair enough. Like, at least there's an assimilation there that can happen other than the language, because across Europe there's many different normal practices that are shared collectively across the board. So you're like, right, okay. But the problem that you've got there is when you throw the net out wider, that dilutes in terms of quality, in terms of education, in terms of language, in terms of customs, in terms of living standards, in terms of how these people conduct themselves. And we have drastically went down the pan because of that. That's not me sitting here saying that. That's not no Scots Armour sitting here and saying that because, you know, I've got an angry pitchfork and I'm like, I'm saying that because that was Mr. Swinney said. It's a demonstrated fact. It's not an observation. It's demonstrated in the streets each and every single day. Now, if Mr. Swinney's so concerned, and Sturgeon and Salmond and Jack McConnell were all so concerned about the declining rates in Scotland, which I think could be better. Is it drastic? I don't know. Depends on how good the data is, and if that data is genuine and concise with the actual reality of the situation. But point being, if they had any issues, they could have took the tools that they've got. Because let's be absolutely crystal clear, and this is something that me and DJ actually spoke about the other day. When the Edinburgh Agreement was signed, roughly around about, I think it was just before or just after the independence vote, the Holyrood government became more powerful and had more money and resources than any other time since its inception. And Scotland has only got progressively worse. So despite them having more tools and more money to put programmes and incentives in place for young Scottish people coming out of school and getting into technology and getting into healthcare and doing all these things, in making start-up grants and pushing large families and making it normal to promote families amongst the Scottish people. They have willfully, at their own accord, neglected that, which means that's not even a sincere point to them. They're using that as an emotional blackmail card in order to use that as a justification for high levels of immigration into spheres where there's been demonstrated behaviours that these people are failing in. That is the whole crux of it.
Damn you, mate. I'm trying to make a fucking roll there. No, but just one thing, very briefly. I'll just share my screen again, right? Look at this. There's just in the simplest of terms without getting too bogged down on it, right? But just compare and contrast. Okay, so this is from August 2025, okay? Scotland's population tops 5.5 million for the first time. Just briefly, it should say somewhere, here we go, international migration has fueled a record high in the number of people. Now, you can literally do this any year. Just type in, for example, Scotland 2024 record high population. You can do this all the way back to like fucking 2001, right? However, compare and contrast that from a fucking same website and everything, right? But again, August 2025. And what do you have? Scotland's birth rate falls to the lowest level since 1855. And guess what? You can do the same experiment, if that's what you want to call it, all the way back to about 2015, 2016 time. Each year, Scotland's having less babies than the year prior, right? So it stands to reason that irrespective of what colour these people are, what religion these people are, what part of the world these people are that are coming here, right? It still constitutes replacement migration. Because if we're not having children and we are importing people, whether or not they have children themselves is irrelevant. We are still importing people to make up the deficit for the lack of children that we are having. It is replacement migration. It's literally replacement migration, but yet to this day, it's still brandished as a far-right Nazi goose-stepping conspiracy theorist. It couldn't be any more fucking clear. So when you have our government, to no end, banging on about the solution to our demographic decline being immigration, it is just so in your face. Now, and then you get some people that push back and go, oh, well, what's your solution then? What's your solution? So if I could wave a magic wand. Well, you know, one thing that I would be trying to do if I was in a position of authority and power, you know, would be to try and reach out to the diaspora, our Scottish diaspora, for where there's a conservative estimation of about 36 to 40 million fucking Scots out there that don't live in Scotland. Maybe try and entice some of them back here instead of fucking people from Africa and whatnot. You know, Muslims, etc. You know, cultural clashes and all the rest of it, you know. But no, we can't be doing that. And I mean, the SNP have gone so far, and you remember we did this a wee while ago in streams back in like 2024, or maybe it was the year prior, but they're even trying to redefine what diaspora means now. They want an inclusive definition for diaspora. Why? Because until such a time as they have achieved their inclusive definition of diaspora, the diaspora argument kind of implies that there is such a thing as a native Scot. How else could there be people out there in the world who are Scottish, who don't live here? You know? But that would be what I would be doing. I sure as fuck would not be opening our borders to absolutely every single person that wishes to come here. But, you know, that's my 2 cents in the matter. I don't care what colour you are. You know, Scottish people are an ethnicity and we're going to die out. And that sounds like hyperbole, sounds a bit dramatic and whatnot, but just think about it logistically, mathematically and whatnot. Might not happen in our grandkids' lifetimes. It's going to happen, whether it's naturally or otherwise, because of the trajectory that we are on. You know? That's my 2 cents on that. If you've got anything else to add, then fire on, but I think that's me.
You know, I'd seen this thing recently, and it was, you know how you get these programs, and it's basically like poverty porn. It's a disgusting way to put it. It really is. But right now, my brain isn't firing on cylinders, so there's no other way for me to think in our terminology. And you don't have one of these programs, and they would show you basically like people that are living in really bad poverty, they're on maybe like, you know, the basic empire benefits, and it shows you like their hardship and how they try to live like day to day. And obviously, a lot of these foods, you know, a lot of them, if you pick up the packets and stuff, it will say like bioengineered, or it's food that's kind of like, I suppose, for one part of the world, will get flown thousands of miles out to another where it'll get pumped with shit and then flown thousands of miles to somewhere else to get packed and then put in a freezer. And when I was watching this program, it was a guy and he was talking about like eating local, eating in season, eating healthy, and he kind of turned around and says, you can't put a price on your health. And I know for a lot of people, it's easier to say than do, but it kind of goes down to how it's not so much about how much money you've got to do your shopping, it's how efficient you are at using the materials that you've got. And I took a bit of insight for that because it is true. There's lots of like different things over the years that we've lost sight of, different skills, different way of managing things. And when you listen to a lot of older folk for generations gone by, they turn and says, you know, they were absolutely poor. They had like 8, 9, 10 wains and all the rest of it. And people might say, well, Scots, it was a different time. And you're absolutely right, it was a different time. It was a time where all these issues weren't actually, that we're talking about on stream, weren't actually being played out in real life. These issues didn't actually affect these people at all. And what I would say to folk out there is, if you're actually thinking about having children, in terms of your legacy, in terms of your identity, in terms of where you've came from as an individual and where your ancestry has come from to the point where you're at today, you can't afford to not have children. So if there's one thing that I would say to folk out there, find a woman or find a man, depending if you're a female, be happy, get married, have lots of babies, be the example that you want to be on the street. And that's pretty much all I've got to say on that one, DJ.
Nah, I agree with that, mate. Yeah. Sad reality, though. Just on a side note, there was a video I made, what was it, like last weekend? Thereabouts, where I was talking about fucking, like, the projections for, like, the next 20, 30 years in Scotland, where they think that, like, half of women are going to be single, etc. That combined with all the feminist sort of shit that you're hearing, that combined with, like, incels and MGTOW and all the rest of it, like, a lot more career-orientated people, etc. I think it's a lot easier said than done, unfortunately, for a lot of young men out there, you know, who wish to find a partner. It's not impossible, but there does seem to be a bit of a dip in desire for that sort of life, unfortunately. And I think that's also helping to exacerbate the problems that we're seeing at present in terms of our declining birth rate and whatnot. But I don't know what the fucking answer is to that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people out there who don't fucking think that way, but there is an increasing amount of people who do, unfortunately. Anyway, yeah, apart from that, I mean, I can either play us out with a song or I can play the intro that I was going to play at the start about you. So it's up to you, mate. You get two choices. Well, the floor is yours. Since this is effectively your stream anyway, I'm just doing you the courtesy because I'm such a progressive, inclusive guy. You know.
Let me say this. For anybody that's subbed to my channel, maybe in the chat, I've put up 2 videos. One of which has been, I suppose it's got issues with it. So it's been took down, it's been put back up, but then there's issues with it again. And it's not me, it's things that YouTube are flagging to myself. I have now rectified the problem, and it will be getting added up when I complete the series so that it's in an orderly line. I'll put it into a playlist. I'm not trolling people, I'm not bamming MD up. It's just basically the way that YouTube has flagged this up that's kind of got me a bit confused, but I now understand what needs to be done. The second one there, you can go and see.
You've got a phone.
I'm not saying you have to go and watch it. I'm not saying you have to like it. What the whole purpose is of this, and I'm going to be upfront and very honest like I do with everything else. I am trying to create a chronological order of events to show you pretty much, in my opinion, where things are going to go and how the picture is going to go. And if that's something that people want to tune into, that is also very fair enough. If not, then it's sound. I don't take any credit for it because the stuff that I've got, I've sourced it all over the place, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Rumble, whatever. And I'm trying to put this in as I say, in an order that even a Joe Normie could watch and fully understand. So that's what I'm going to be working on the next while. Obviously, me and Deji's going to be doing our streams, and there is going to be times where we're going to collaborate and have other people on, and I'm really looking forward to that. So for people that's tuned in tonight, thank you very much for giving us your time. I really do appreciate it, and God bless you, and God bless yours, and hopefully we can navigate through this period of filth and madness and come out and be all the better for it. As for your question, DJ, do whatever suits me. I'm happy with either.
I mean, there is a part of me that wants to play it. I mean, it might be somewhat anticlimactic, but David Attenborough AI, mate. Oh my god, I don't know how I didn't come up with this concept years ago to do that sort of shit. But anyway, yeah, I think I will do that. But yeah, as I say, you've got a fan there, mate. You're God-driven. Yeah, it's one thing you can say about him. Absolutely is, and that goes full circle. Very good at doing full circles. At the very beginning, we were speaking about the two Johns who both passed away in the same year. They too were both very much God-driven, and I really do hope, albeit I'm not particularly invested in fucking religion and whatnot myself, I do hope if there is something after death, sorry, they are in a better place. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Yeah, mate. And Scott Webb, good to see you, mate. I will give you a phone at some point during the week. Yeah, but yeah, fuck it, mate. Fucking hell, mate. Anyway.
To provide an accurate Scottish depiction of 2025, one must harken back to days of old, from Bebo to blockbusters, Vikings, non-binaries, Picts and Bames. Times have indeed been steadfast towards nationalistic goose-stepping progressivism. Under the watchful gaze of Slippery Swinney, a fascinating byproduct emerged from the soy-stenched slop. A man with principles despite phenotypically speaking, resembling an antiquated condom discarded by Barry Chuckle. Glasgow-born Derek Patterson. This passionate orangutan breeder, philanthropist and pro-Islamic Glaswegian would soon adopt the pseudonym Scots Armour in order to avoid bigotry from misogynists. It was here he met a Highland alpha male with a throbbing god rod and big muscles. Despite many sexual advances, Derek was met with rejection by the alpha Highland Chad, but that was key. Rejection was Derek's lesson, and with time, Derek Armour truly understood that to be a Scot, you can't be gay. And thus, Scots Armour was born. Alas, it's now 2025. And I must say this, govern me harder, Papa Putin. Please, you Slavic man, I crave your nukes. Sanction me harder, Papa Putin. Please, play your part. I am David Attenborough. In regarding to that, Alba Gur Gareth Gates. Fuck off now.
Very gay and autistic.
Adios.